Topping today's news, the Director of Education defends the online learning platform. Relentless rains bring another round of flooding to the capital, and local officials eyeing the violence in Haiti. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jarino Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. Thanks for joining us. With murmurings of parents unsatisfied with the report cards generated by the online virtual learning platform, the learning management system, the Director of Education has spoken in defense of the system, giving an explanation for changes ongoing. Cale Campbell reports.
With a little over a month before students return to school for the 2022-2023 academic school year, and with report cards only just been distributed last week, there has been much discourse about and displeasure regarding the Ministry of Education's learning management system and the impact the sometimes non-functioning system had on report card generation for the end of the 2021-2022 academic year. Director of Education Marcellus Taylor, addressing the challenges that teachers, parents, and students encountered at the close of the school year, says while he can't speak on what some parents may or may not have seen on the LMS, there has been an improvement with the system generating report cards for 150 schools, up from only 2 schools last year. Mr. Taylor says when changing systems, there will be some challenges. However, he adds that his team has done an excellent job in populating the data to generate the report cards and releasing them.
There were some report cards that were not ready for one reason or other, but that was a minority of the report cards. And so we have seen our ability to generate report cards using the system improve substantially. And the hope is that the next time around that we'll have all the kinks worked out and the report cards generated without flaws.
Last month, the Ministry of Education announced that the release of report cards for all public schools would be delayed for 14 days due to technical issues with the LMS. Mr. Taylor explains that educators are subjected to time bounds and deadlines, adding to the challenge of working with a new system. Despite this, they view being able to correct the issues suffered with the LMS system and delivering report cards after the delay as a success.
Because we're moving the system forward, and as things go on, we have a part of the portal where parents can see the grades that their child get after each assignment. And we're hoping that parents and teachers and everybody will utilize that feature as a means of monitoring what students do, to ensure that students are, if they're falling down, that we notice it right away. We help to give them whatever support we can, so that whenever they get whatever report card, nothing is a surprise, because you kind of know how this child is progressing. You support them as much as you can, and the report card is only a reflection of, as opposed to how it historically was like a surprise. Oh, I didn't know my child wasn't doing well, or I didn't know my child was doing this well. And so this is where we're moving, and so utilizing a system like this is critical in moving us into this new way of improving students' learning outcomes by monitoring more closely what they do.
Criticisms made by teachers have been addressed through enhancements to the system since implemented during the pandemic.
Obviously, if everyone is only just learning a system and having to do it as they move along, then there would be challenges, not just with people acquiring the skills needed for the system, but also we are customizing the system. So the process of customization also is a process. And if we were not in the situation, it would all be done out of, in the background. It would take 2-3 years to do all of those stuff that we've done. But we had to actually do it as we were actually working. What we're doing is we're building a system that is fit for the Bahamian public education system. You cannot go and buy that off the shelf. You have to make that. And so we know that this would require some back and forth, some things working well, some things not working as well, and then the adjustments being made.
Director Taylor thanks teachers for their involvement in using and improving the LMS while encouraging teachers apprehensive of it to make use of the system. He says that effort goes towards making the LMS better. For JCN News, I'm Cale Campbell.
Thanks for that report, Kale. Heavy rainstorms began late Thursday evening and has continued throughout the day on Friday, resulting in another round of major flooding in the capital. The Bahamas Department of Meteorology issued several severe thunderstorm warnings on Friday from 2:50 p.m. to 4:50 p.m. in New Providence, the Berry Islands, Andros, and Eleuthera and their adjacent waters. The inclement weather is associated with a mid to upper level low moving west and northwestward toward and across the warning areas. Boaters in the warning areas were advised to seek safe harbor as the weather system could produce strong gusty winds, dangerous lightning, hail, and possible tornadic activity, along with localized flooding. And we can confirm major flooding on some of the streets and highways here in the capital today, including Joe Farrington Road, parts of Fire Trail Road, Gladstone Road, Coral Harbor Road, East Bay Street, Elizabeth Estates, Bernard Road, and parts of Cable Beach. Meanwhile, organizers have canceled the Junkanoo in July festivities for this weekend due to the inclement weather. They expect to resume with the cultural festivities back at Arawak Key next weekend. The Ministry of Economic Affairs hosted its inaugural meeting for members of the newly appointed Trade Commission. The meeting was held at the Balmoral Club earlier this month. The newly appointed body includes a cross-section of professionals who represent both New Providence and the Family Islands. Minister of Economic Affairs Senator Halkitis, that's Michael Halkitis, attended the meeting virtually and congratulated the new members on their appointments. He said the commission, which has been carefully selected, represents the diversity in a modern Bahamas and would play a key role in the country's trade sector. As for the trade agenda, Mr. Halkitis highlighted 3 areas. They include the national trade policy that will provide the framework to the government's overall economic diversification strategy, existing trade agreements, as the Bahamas has trade agreements with the United States, European Union, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And he discussed the World Trade Organization, the WTO, where successive governments have undertaken studies to understand the legislative and policy reforms for joining the WTO. He said that that process is only 1/3 complete and that the government currently maintains the position that negotiations will not resume unless the private sector is driving the process. A juvenile male faced 1 count of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder at his arraignment in the magistrate's court on Friday morning. The juvenile appeared before Magistrate Shaka Seville, accused of the shooting death of 26-year-old Chavez Jones on June 27th. The teen was also accused of the attempted murder of 3 others, including France Dulce, Rotnell Gerard, and Leroy Petty, also on June 27th. According to prosecutors, on the day in question, sometime around 10 p.m., police were called to a shooting on Dean's Lane. Officers on arrival learned that a group of people were standing outside a business establishment when a vehicle pulled up. The occupant produced a firearm and discharged the weapon at the group, hitting 4 males about the body. The victims were all taken to the hospital in private vehicles. However, Mr. Jones later died. The juvenile was not required to enter a plea. He was remanded to the Simpson Penn School for Boys. He returns to court in October, at which time he will be served with a voluntary bill of indictment. From the region, local officials are said to be keeping a close watch on the social unrest and gang violence taking place in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, where at least 89 people, including 2 journalists, have been reported to have been killed in a week of gang warfare. Reports out of Haiti are that 2 criminal gangs known as G9 and GPEP are fighting for control over certain areas. Mayor Joel Janus of the Cite Soleil neighborhood told local radio that residents were under a state of siege and lacked water, food, and fuel, while no official death toll has been given. A local human rights group says it knows of 89 people killed. 47 of them are believed to be gang members, while the remaining 42 are thought to be residents caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, thousands of residents who rely on trucks to deliver drinking water and essential food items, they have been completely cut off by the violence and are going hungry and thirsty. A local aid agency has called on the armed groups to spare civilians and allow aid into Cite Soleil. We'll take a break here, and we'll be right back after these commercials.